Hi guys. Felt like a little dance party today. It's Monday. Ugh. Yes, disco. Thank you, Druid. Um, yeah, Pixel Bay, which is where I get um, well, it's not copyright free. It's like Creative Commons music that I can play without getting a copyright strike. Um, they have kind of a few newer like music channels. Some of them will put you to sleep, and I think that's what their intention is. But there's this one is the that I was just playing is like funk. So get your disco on. So how are you guys? Seems like we have a small crowd here this morning, just based on the number that Twitch shows me, but I don't ever know if it's right or not. So Robin, how are you? How was your weekend? Druid, how was your weekend? I feel like, I saw you guys on Thursday, but I feel like with the holidays, I haven't spent much time with you guys. Like December just zapped me. Um, got a few things for you today. We've got, let's see, the 18th century with Averil Colby. I gotta be honest, you guys. She's a little bit of a snooze. I'm very interested in things that she has to say and the pictures she shows, but I'm kind of missing that Florence snark. Hey, Kellen. Oh, okay. So not overly anything. I kind of feel like that's how my weekend was. We had some kind of gross weather. And now I'm trying to think, was that Friday or Saturday? And yeah, just nothing really much happened. Oh, Robin, you're getting snow too. Yeah, I think, you know what, and while I'm thinking about it, I guess just at the top of the show, for the handful of viewers that are here, if you are joining me and Jill on Tuesdays for our book club and, our hijinks on Instagram through Quilt Nerding, um, Jill is expecting a really horrible snowstorm tomorrow, and I am expecting like flooding rains. So the East Coast is getting slammed tomorrow. So just want to give you guys a heads up just in case like we have technical difficulty and can't get online. So, 'tis the season. I always think summer's a little risky because of thunderstorms and that kind of thing, but I think winter's far worse because, power outages and cable lines down and all that jazz. Druid, yes, the barometric pressure. This morning when I knew that we're in for floods, and this morning I got up and I walked down the stairs and I was like, oh my gosh, I think my knee had just decided to take a vacation because I'm like, like walking down the stairs like some old person, and my knee just like gives out. So it's feeling much better. So I was up and around and moving, but that barometric pressure can be a real stinker. And I just thought it was in my mind, right? The very first time I experienced that. And then I realized, I'm like, there really is something to, this started happening in my like 20s or 30s, but I remember thinking like, oh, the old folks have something, there might be something to this. Turning your mattress. Yeah, I probably need to do that. I haven't done that in so long. Yeah, that's something, Human bodies they're kind of a pain. So yeah, this weekend, while I should have been at my desk doing things as I had planned, um, I should not sit here and like just open my life of procrastination up to you guys. But I do try to be, blunt and honest here about myself. So yeah, total procrastination this weekend, and I did do a few things that were like important, but I ended up sitting on the couch and downloading newspaper clippings of Ruby Short McKim, which I'm going to show you today, and reading about her and looking for some other like Depression era and 1940s patterns. And I figure any day researching quilts is a productive day. So I don't feel too bad about it for, the weekend. But also while I was downloading, because that's almost like it's kind of a no-brainer, like production sort of work. It doesn't like, you just type in a few things and then it's just searching and copy, paste, download, whatever. I was also binge watching this YouTube channel. It's this young couple that are ex-Mormons, and they do all of these reaction videos and stuff, and they're talking about Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrandt. So, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with who those people are, but they're some influencers, YouTube influencers who are very bad actors. And Ruby Franke pled guilty to child abuse and is now, I don't know if she's been sentenced yet. But yeah, so these two kids, I say kids, God, they're my son's age. This couple, they've been watching and commenting about this stuff for a number of years. So like they saw all this stuff happening and were reporting on it on YouTube. And then when Ruby Franke was arrested, they were like, "Yeah, we told you." I was like, "Oh my gosh, so much drama." I don't know why. Why do we like to watch that stuff? I don't know. Maybe you guys are like, "Stephanie, you're crazy. Why would you watch those things?" But I don't know. Sometimes like the internet gobbledygook is interesting at the very least, and yeah, I learned some things. So yeah, that was my weekend. So let's see. Why don't we look at some Ruby McKim? Now the question is, do I have the correct screen for this? Yes, I think so. So first of all, actually, before we get into Ruby McKim, we're going to look at my desktop. So apologize for this, but this is the easiest way to show you guys stuff. So what you might see, what you might notice here, and let me go back to me. And you can see behind me. Now, this is not Ruby McKim. This quilt is Nancy Page. And it is from, it's 1930 something. And these, let me go back. These patterns were printed in the newspaper. And if you've ever done any research, if you have access to newspapers.com, and I think public libraries often do have access to that. So even if you can't afford a subscription, public libraries are such a great place, because I think you can get, like many public libraries, their system has access to like Ancestry. So if you're doing any kind of genealogical research, and then newspapers.com is part of the Ancestry family. So you could get access to all that stuff, and you can find these things. But anyway, these were printed in the paper. The Kansas City Star is one paper that printed a lot of stuff. But I have found that certain localities would pick like a needlework project or a quilt and run a contest for it. And I was really interested to see some of Ruby McKim's were actually for children. And that kind of surprised me. And there's a theory behind the way her pieces were designed. But before I get to that one, I have to talk about my quilt. Now, I apologize if I did talk about this last time. I'm starting to forget. I know I mentioned it, I think, on a quilt nerding stream on Instagram. But this quilt, as you can see, I purchased it kind of thinking Sunbonnet Sue, because of these little blocks, which are Sunbonnet Sue-ish. But if you look at my screen, you can see this little gal here is actually the doll, D for doll. But the maker has just kept making blocks of her and then alternating them with the different alphabet blocks, which are just fantastic. So I thought I'd scroll through those. Yeah, I know, right? The cat is adorable. Let's see. What do I do next page on here? So I just have to go down. Here we go. So EF, because I have the quilt folded, you can't see all of them, but I mean, they're just so charming. But look, here's the duck, or I'm sorry, G for goose. And you can see kind of how they did it. It's a little bit, it's like ever so subtly different. Like they did not do the wing on here. Um, I'll say she because we know it was a she, even if we don't really know. The beak is a little bit different. I'm trying to see. Let's see, house. House down here. House looks pretty much like house is supposed to look on here. What you see. You guys see that? pull my whole thing down if I let's see what else. Sadly, O for orange is just like a big circle. She did put like a little black nub up there, I guess, to show like the stem. But oh, just so cute. And let's see, the king I think is folded over, but there's the queen. And it's really interesting to me is the way that these, yes, the elephant. I mean, they're just all so cute. Oh, this one. This was the one I thought. Jay is Jack in the Box. It turned out a little bit weird the way she did this. Because it's like just sprouting out of nowhere. It's actually supposed to be like a little scarf, I think. But these are just so charming. And the instructions in the paper are a little like, they're not super clear. But a skilled needleworker would be able to look at this and say like, okay, I can do, this piece in applique, and then I can do this part of it in embroidery. And I think that was the intention. But when I downloaded these a very long time ago, so I knew what they were as soon as I saw this quilt. But the way that the maker decided what was going to be fabric. So the lamp might be my favorite one, if you could see. It's got like literally a little chain to pull on the lamp. It's so cute. But, what you decide to embroider and what you decide is going to be an applique piece, I think is kind of up to the maker a little bit. I mean, obviously, like the big pieces make sense that they're, going to be an applique. Yeah, there's O for orange, just a big circle. The music notes, they're down here. And then, let's see, there's the music notes. And then the rabbit has got to be my favorite too, besides the lamp. There's this little fussy cut tail on the rabbit. There was a little strawberry, I guess, on the fabric, and she fussy cut that. So, yeah, this quilt is, they're all my favorite, but this quilt right now is like, so precious. But anyway, just so charming. The tree is right here. The sailboat, I think, is right over the fold. V for vase. I think that's the next one. Oh. No, you know what? I just realized. Holy cow. So in the pattern I have, V is for violet or Valentine because there's little hearts there. She did vase. Okay, now I have a mystery. You guys. This is crazy. I'm going to have to go back through and make sure they all match up. I'm pretty sure they do, except V now I've found does not match. I'm going to have to look and see if U for umbrella. I'm pretty sure it's there. Or maybe not. Good Lord. Yeah, here's the W for the windmill. And it's interesting, when they designed it, they decided not to do Z. And the last, because I think the way that I think the pattern was originally meant to be like a 5x5, so it was 25 blocks, and adding Z would have been the 26th. So what they did with Y is YOU. And I don't know how does that really make sense? Like, we're just leaving the Z out is basically what it means. But yeah, she did embroider that on there. So this is interesting. Yes, X is not on here either. WX, yeah. UVWX, yeah, XYZ is all YOU. That's the whole, yeah, there is no X. So what that actually means, there's 24 blocks. I don't think I saved in here Let me look in my folder. You guys are getting to see. Eee! You're getting to see all the stuff. It's on my desktop. Oh, now you can see it's going to go on an infinity what you're looking at. Okay, we'll stop that. That gets weird. Um, so let's see if I have. I think this is the only image of the quilt that I have, which is right here. And you can see it's like not a super. I mean, in this case, it looks like S is for star, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, some of these don't look right. They're not like ice cream. Well, it's an ice cream cone, not a dish of ice cream. So it's really interesting. However, whoever made these designs or drawings is not necessarily the person who did the Nancy Cabot. So, or I'm sorry, Nancy Page. Did I say Nancy Cabot earlier? I get them flipped. It's Nancy Page. So hopefully I said Nancy Page in the beginning. The person who was responsible for the Nancy Page Quilt Club was Florence Legank, or Leganky. Hey, Jill. So, hey, Jill, by the way, I did let everybody who was here at the top of the show know that we may have technical issues tomorrow because of the weather. So I did put it out there. I'll say it again at the end. But anyway, so this is sometimes like pretty much all you have. And then it'll talk about maybe, they kind of talk about like, oh, you'll use a fine muslin and you'll blah, 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 whatever. So you get this kind of stuff in the paper, but a lot of times you don't get much else. Like there is not a whole lot to tell you what to do with these. There's like some information here, but it's often about other people making the block. Talking about what they did. Nancy might have made a robin with its warm coloring. Like, there's some stuff about sizing but there's typically nothing that says like, let's see, she took a newspaper pattern to cut out the square. Okay, so over this she laid her square of white, holding the two against a window pane. She was able to outline. So that's a little bit of instruction. But a lot of times these newspaper things were just like, they didn't tell you anything. So now these we've seen. They're cute. They're charming. We love them. Let's look at some things that are a little weird. Ruby Short McKim. So a very long time ago, I heard about her Rhineland quilt, and I started looking for that. And then, of course, I ran across a whole bunch of other ones. But let's look at the Rhineland quilt. Oh, actually, let me go to the big quilt. So this is what the Rhineland quilt supposed to look like. And you can see there's these two different ducks that are the quilting designs. And then, what you would recognize as your typical nursery rhyme people in nursery rhymes. And they're pretty cute, right? Grandma's booty. What are you talking about, Jill? When we get to the toy shop quilt scared me a little bit. So this is the toy shop quilt, and I see this bear in my nightmares. This bear is terrifying. And this animal up here is supposed to be a dog, and I don't know what is wrong with this dog. Its head looks like it got, like a towel thrown on it or something. It's very weird. And then this creature, I don't know what that is supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be some type of toy, but it's slightly terrifying. And then there's the mouse. The mouse is up to something. But then there is not actually even in here, I don't think, in this version, there is, am I thinking of the right one? There's one of these that has like this terrifying, like Jack in the Box sort of thing. This might be another quilt. Right? Yes, Robin. It's like a cross between a schnauzer and a bloodhound, but like, where is the dog's face? Like, it's. It would not be hard to draw a dog face, right? So anyway, this one, the Jack in the Box must be a different quilt that I'm thinking of. Actually, it might be this one, but um, yeah, some of this stuff is really cute. I mean, look at that stocking and the little drum, but ugh, the bear. Um, let's look at some of these individually. This thing. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a cat, and it's supposed to be a toy. But I don't know about you, but there's a cat sitting behind me, and he does not look like this. He is like, that is no cat. Um, yeah, it's really really strange. The horse, the little rocking horse. I think that's cute. The soldier, definitely, he's pointing his cannon right at your face. The drum, that's cute. And you notice there's like a star in all of them too. And then here's Noah's Ark. That's cute. Although apparently on the Ark they had a kangaroo and an elephant, and that was it. Okay, here's the dog. Like, there's this line here, and then I guess that's its eye and its nose here. I don't know. Ruby McKim. Her stuff. And so, to give you a little bit of background on Ruby McKim, um, she she's born like late 1800s, and when she's only like 19, she graduates from high school and goes like to Parsons in New York City. And I'm trying to remember, she's originally from like someplace in the Midwest, I think, like Missouri, something like that. So she goes to Parsons for a little while and studies like drawing. So essentially, she's a graphic designer, in 1916, which would be unheard of for women, generally. She's like one in a million. I mean, certainly um, we see women that did get these opportunities, but they're very few and far between. So anyway, she's professionally trained or academically trained in drawing, at least. I don't know what other kinds of stuff. I want to say she dabbled like in ceramics and some other work, that was part of her art school career. But yeah, the drawings are just really strange. Yeah, like I keep going here, like, but yeah, okay, it's a bloodhound, but like what? I just don't get it. um, Now this stocking is different looking than the one that was in the quilt drawing. I go back to the fact, like, who was responsible for doing the drawing of the quilt? It obviously was not Ruby McKim, or I don't think it was. The train is cute. The mouse. This horrifying bear is even scarier. I think this is supposed to be honey dripping out of its mouth, or maybe it's a tongue. I don't know. It just not the sort of thing I want to see in the nursery. The marionette, she's kind of cute, a little weird, but kind of cute. And then a star. His toes. Let me see. Oh, yeah. The bear has got these like gnarly toes. Five Nights at Freddy's. Five Nights at Freddy's is where this bear should be. If you don't know what Five Nights at Freddy's is, look it up. It's a scary gaming situation. Yeah, and so then they start advertising, for what the next thing is. And, this was interesting. There's like, we're talking cash prizes and stuff. And these particular ones, let's see, what's the date on this? One's 1933. So these were printed, in the needlework section, the women's, like, decor and fashion, all that kind of stuff. That's where these were printed. But now let's look at what I was surprised to find were the ones that she created for children. And these I clipped in newspapers. But this quilt, this was a contest, and this is the Peter Pan quilt, 1916. And I think, let's see, the Daily Oklahoman, I think I got some of these from the Daily Oklahoman and some maybe from, no, I think it was her other quilt I got from Boston. But I think I mentioned, like, some papers would pick these up. and go full steam. Like every Wednesday and Sunday, or every Sunday, they were printing a new block, and they would be like in the children's section for this particular one. And the goal with these was to make them easy enough for children to be able to sew. So this would be the first two, were Tinkerbell and Peter Pan. And it's really interesting because, like, when I think about Peter Pan, I don't know about you guys, I picture the Disney version of Peter Pan. That was 1950 something, 1958 maybe, sometime in the 50s, when the Disney Peter Pan came out. And we have this, today have this very specific image of Peter Pan. I'm trying to think. There's been like the live action stuff. There's been a whole bunch of different Peter Pan things, but they all seem to have that, like what Disney created, the little hat that he wore with the feather and all that kind of stuff. And here you see he's very different than what I would have expected. Like if I saw these things, I would just be like, oh, these look like little pixies or, some kind of little creatures or whatever. But Peter Pan is by the mushroom and Tinkerbell is ringing the bell. Oops, come on. And so, why aren't these loading? I love it when technology works. Let's see. Well, now they don't want to load. But anyway, what I was going to show you, and hopefully this will load in a second. There are... Am I frozen by any chance? Let me see. Okay, I'm not frozen. I was right there for a minute. I don't know what is going on with newspapers.com. So let me open that back up. You can't hit the back button too often with newspapers.com in case you have it and work with it. It's... Well, what in the heck? It is not loading now. Ah, here we go. Thank goodness. Good grief. Okay. Now I have to resort because I clip a lot of stuff. Oh, you're yes, I'm sorry. Oh, and look, there's a cat looking at. Look, where's the C for cat? It must be on the other side here. The C for cat. All right, I'm very unhappy about this. It's for some reason it's only loading like certain stuff. Yes. He's looking for something to jump or bite. He's like looking, should I jump up there? Should I jump down there? Should I just bite this quilt? Okay. Newspapers.com. Why? Why you being this way? Okay, we may have to come back to this. I don't know why it does not want to load. He's always watching my hands because he's never sure there might be food in it. Oh my gosh, you guys. My husband had to take a day off work today because he's a state employee, and the way he gets vacation time and holiday time, he ends up getting too much of it, which, like, wow, really? What a thing to complain about. But he ends up like putting it in a bank, and he's going to lose time if he didn't, take the time. So he's home this morning. I was kind of lounging around reading something. Hey, Marodum. How are you? Thank you so much for subscribing. We got the Butterick lady. I love her so much. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Um, so anyway, my husband cooks breakfast. I'm sort of have some dry cereal and get on with my day. My husband likes a hearty breakfast, so he cooked like eggs and bacon, and I like some bacon. So he comes in, and like I said, I'm lounging there. I'm reading my phone. I've got my coffee, and I'm eating the bacon. And my cat, not this cat, but the other cat, she's sitting on the back of the couch right by me. And I turn. This cat loves bacon. She tries a Lady in the Tramp with me, basically. I got the bacon in my mouth, and she's like, "Oh, let me have some of that." It was ridiculous. I wish I had been able to get a picture of it. Um, so yeah, so far today I have worked on some PowerPoints and played tug of war with a cat with some bacon. Okay, all right. I think it's behaving now. Yes. Uh, this one, he likes ice cream. And our cat, a number of years ago, he passed away in, I think, 2015. Um, he loved ice cream, would be very aggressive. Like, up in your face. Like, you know, give me some of that ice cream. Um, yeah. So bratty. Okay, so I'm gonna maybe not open these fully, and hopefully you can just kind of see the thumbnails. But Wendy's house. I mean, you can see how very simple these particular uh, drawings are. There's not a whole lot going on here, and certainly if you were more skilled at sewing um, and handwork, you could certainly you see some of these. Certainly, you could do it the same way as these. Have your piece of fabric, applique it down, and then do the stitching to supplement that. But for children, this was an opportunity to basically learn some stitching. And what I found as I was, looking at all of these, and I got them all, I downloaded them all, or clipped them all. I haven't downloaded them yet. But on these pages, these are children's pages in the newspaper. And so you would find things like, let's see if I can find one. I think it's one of the earlier ones where the kids were writing in about, saying, "Oh, okay, Jill, you do. Okay, yeah, yeah." And with the Peter Pan, I feel like I maybe have seen this stuff before and just did not realize it was Ruby McKim. And I don't know if this is one of them, but as I was clipping these, I did see ones where the little children would send letters in, and this doesn't look like it's one of them, but they were writing into the paper and talking to the people that put together these children's pages, and we're saying things like, "I'm getting ready to start my Peter Pan quilt." And these were little girls that were like 7, 8, 9 years old. And then some of okay, some of the all right, come back here. Nope. Like I said, you hit the back button too many times, you're going to be in trouble. um, Peter Pan. So anyway, they're writing in and saying, like, with great enthusiasm, if this is where some of the embroidered characters on the crazy quilt originated. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Um, but you could see. So then after she did Peter Pan, she came out with a couple of different other ones. One was the Quaddies. And best I can tell, the Quaddies are, and for some reason, let's see if it'll give me all of them. For some reason, it does not like these tags. Let's see, let's get rid of Peter Pan. There we go. Oh, but then it gives us Mother Goose still. So anyway, here's the Quaddies. This was called the Quaddies Quilties Bedtime Quilt. And these are like kind of like Beatrix Potter characters, I think, because they talk about like this is Farmer Brown's son. And if I remember correctly, that is, oh, look, the Boston Strangler. This is why I fall down rabbit holes when I'm looking in the newspaper, because there's stuff like that. You know, and it's like, who doesn't want to learn about the Boston Strangler? Hey. um, let's see. Yeah, now these are going to be all in another order again. So after the Quaddies, she did this colonial quilt. And the colonial quilt, so bizarre, because I'm thinking colonial. Well, like George Washington, right? 1776. You know, I don't know, like an eagle. Like, you know, these are all the things like when I think of colonial. You know, I think of that period, like the Revolutionary War period, and a little bit before, like, you know, colonists, pilgrims, like this kind of stuff. Well, she went way back in history. And there are stuff in this colonial one, like, okay, this ship, look, is a Viking ship, best as I can tell, right? And, you know, like this looks like a sort of a dragony thing, and then these look like Viking symbols. I mean, this is a Viking ship. So, okay. And then this other one, then she has two different Indians. The primitive Indian. Ooh, a longship. Yes, a Viking longship, right? So the primitive Indian. And so this is, let me just open it so you can see. Native American bow and arrow. You know, very probably based in no reality at all, but, you know, very like, well, this is what we think of Indians, of Native Americans. And then you have Indian home life. So you see it's a woman, and I think she's cooking or something, and then there's a teepee in the background. Then we get to the Santa Maria. And then we get to Cabot, Balboa, Champlain, Henry Hudson, Sir Walter Raleigh, the Meeting House, which I'm thinking that's Quaker, right? Then we have the New World Missions. So that kind of goes with Balboa, I guess. Captain John Smith, which would include Pocahontas. The Puritans. Narragansett's Challenge, which I don't know a whole lot about, but that's a New England thing, right? Priscilla. I'm not entirely sure who she is. I maybe you guys know in terms of like American history. But between Narragansett's Challenge and Peter Stuyvesant, I guess Priscilla's somewhere in there in terms of like stuff happening. Then we have colonial justice. We've got a man sitting in the stocks. Let's look at that one in particular because it's funny. Like, why would you want this on a quilt? Here's a man in the stocks. Welcome to colonial history. And it's just called colonial justice. So it's the 18th block of this quilt. Let's see what they say. So I think this is in 1927. Yeah, this essentially is talking about, you know, not really even the subject matter or how to make the block, but it talks about there's $75 in prizes for the kids that make this quilt and submit it to the paper. So, you know, I mean, I'm guessing a lot of it was about drumming up readership. Yeah, Mardim, like exactly. And I mean, even just these that I have up here, the colonial quilt was the next one. Or I'm sorry, the Mother Goose colonial quilt was the next one, which I'm like, colonial Mother Goose, like I don't know what that means either. But these are right at the top so I can show you and see the difference between let's see, where's Mother Goose? So see the difference between this Mother Goose And bear with me a minute. This Mother Goose. Same designer. Ah, Jill. Okay, so do you mean the simplified one or the like the fancier one? Like I love this Mother Goose, the fancy one. Yeah, very recognizable. This Mother Goose looks like a sort of a like 8-bit witch. Yes, exactly, Robin. um, so yeah, like just in terms of I guess I'm flipping through here. Yeah, I mean these are very cute. Like you recognize what these are very much. Um, Although Bye Bye Baby Bunting has got something going on with a diaper, and I don't know. I'm not sure what's happening there. Humpty Dumpty. Okay, look at this Humpty Dumpty, and then look at this Humpty Dumpty, which will give you nightmares. Here he is. That Humpty Dumpty. Right. Yeah, Jill, definitely share pictures when you get a chance. Um, but yeah, like I said, like Dim said, everything is very very square, very simple straight lines. We're not talking about these very complex curves like she has in the in these later ones. Like that would be complicated for, I mean, certainly for a child to do. No, this would be way too complicated for a smaller child to do, at least in the 20th century. Now, we talk about those kids in the 1800s and the 1700s that were, like cross stitching these elaborate samplers when they're 3. I think kids by this point in time, 1920s, I mean, even the teens, we're getting rid of child labor and children are getting a childhood again, or the childhood they probably never had. And so this kind of stuff, I think, is, keeping them still doing the kind of it's more aspirational type of, sewing and playing house and that kind of thing. It's I think it's a little less about preparing them to make all the quilts that their family needs to make because, we're just early 20th century. We've moved into a different realm. The Kid Picks version versus the paint program version. Exactly. It's so funny. And it's like, clearly she had good drawing skills. These were very specific decisions she made. And yeah, they're sort of bizarre. But, and then the quilt that gives me the most nightmares is, what she calls the roly-poly, the roly-poly circus quilt. Let's see. Let's get rid of Peter Pan again. I don't want quaddies. It still gives me... I hate this. It still gives me the stuff I don't want. Well, anyway. So the roly-polies, some of them are kind of cute. Like this kangaroo. So now here we're talking about things fitting into a circle. It's a block, but it wants to be a circle. Okay, I think I'm back. I'm back. Okay. Yeah, that was me. That was probably my internet. Getting ready for the storm. Let's just prepare you for the fact that, it's going to be like this for a few days coming up. So I don't know. Did you guys see any of did I freeze before I got any of the roly-poly? I'll go ahead and repeat this in case I did. So when looking at the quaddies, the colonial Mother Goose quilt, the Peter Pan, it's all based on these sort of squares. Well, when she gets to the roly poly circus quilt, these are, even they're still meant to be blocks, they're round, right? Okay, so you guys saw the kangaroo, which, yeah, the kangaroo's cute. We have a gnu, we have a bear, we have a baboon. Now, the interesting thing about the baboon is it's wearing a shirt and a hat, which, okay, in a circus, got it. How many circuses do you know, though, that have a gnu? Or really a kangaroo for that matter. This would be better as a zoo quilt. Like, to me, this should be the roly poly zoo, not the roly poly circus. But so there's a hippo, there's a reindeer. And what was interesting about this, though, is I did see in some places baboon nudity. But wait, there is a monkey and the monkey's nude. I did see in one paper this was published at a time when the reindeer came like right before Christmas. And so I thought, oh, maybe that was intentional. But then when I ended up getting the bulk of these from the Spokesman Review, and they were published in the spring. So I don't know. And some of the interesting things, just to kind of like in general to talk about these. Oh, here's the lion. I mean, you ever seen a lion with a face like that? It's so weird. And I get it. Like, again, it's trying to be simplified and knowing like a lion's mane is a lot, right? But that lion, just a big cloud head. And what was the other one that really was like, oh, Lord. The seal is a little bizarre, too. Where's that other monkey? Maybe I messed up and didn't clip it. But there is a second monkey, not including the baboon. Anyway, the lion was bit by a bee. That bit a bee. I don't know. Because, I mean, we can see she absolutely could draw. But some things really... Now, the rest of the animals, I think, are kind of okay. She's got a crocodile, a camel. The seal's a little weird. The leopard kind of looks normal. The tiger, the elephant. Oh, the goat. The goat's hanging out on a crescent moon. Oh, the hyena. Because every circus needs a hyena. Like, what? And I don't know what is happening with this hyena. Like, what part of what? Okay, this is its face, right? There's an eye and there's an ear. But what is all this? I mean, like, are these legs? I don't know. I mean, I guess that's a front leg. I don't think hyenas kind of have like thinner dog tails, right? Like, I don't know. It was strange. So yeah. So oh, hey, Kate. So it makes you wonder if it has something to do with local printing. Yes. So that is part of it, I think. The newspaper technology, and I mean, we're talking like, so the Mother Goose Colonial Quilt was 1917, Peter Pan was 1916, and then the later ones were in the 30s. I'm trying to remember if there were any in the 20s. I think there might have been one in the 20s. So yes, she would send the art, and then wild, untamable canine, right? But there's also a dog. There is also a dog. Where I pass from. And of course, now it's not loading properly again. Come on, newspaper. Newspapers.com was fine last night when I was nonstop clipping this stuff. Okay. We're going to give up on that. I'm tired of you, newspapers.com. But yeah, so they obviously, we're talking about newspapers were very manually typeset and all. I mean, I think probably till the mid 20th century. I mean, you literally... maybe even later 20th century, like newspapers were people literally like typesetting stuff like with actual movable type, and to create the all of this stuff, they literally had to make the printing plates. So yes, there quite likely was maybe some adjustments that had to be done. And obviously, if they were gonna, if they were just gonna run the patterns, then that's just the picture of the pattern and any like other information that would come from the McKim studio. But I think if they were gonna do a contest or something, they created their own stuff to go along with that. So, in that example of the toy shop quilt that didn't quite like it doesn't quite look like the patterns, the actual pattern. I think that's a matter of like that's the newspaper. The other thing that is challenging with these newspaper quilts is, for one, newspapers.com sometimes will not have a full edition. So, for instance, one of these last night, I want to say it was the Boston Globe, that I was looking through because they had a complete set. But one newspaper, they didn't have the later parts of the edition. Like the newspaper would have been like 80 pages long or 70 pages long, and what was scanned in for that archive was only like pages 1 through 30. So that later part was missing. So that's one challenge that you find when you're like, it's every Sunday for this period of time, but like one Sunday's newspaper's messed up. That's frustrating. Luckily, for most of these, a second or third newspaper printed this stuff. Sometimes it was like a dozen newspapers would print them. But once you really dig in and start looking, you'll search these and you'll see like one particular newspaper will come up with having had all of them. Like, as an example, I searched the Quaddy quilt, and I think it might have been the Boston Globe had the entire print of the Quaddy quilt. So those little Beatrix Potter characters. And you could tell by the number of times that the Quaddy quilt appeared during this time period I specified, 1917. But then you'll see other papers that had it too. And so, but if you go to those papers, you'll see they got around to printing like maybe 3 of them. Or they like printed them whenever they had some extra space. So that, I'm sure, was infuriating to people. And you'll also notice, particularly for the children's quilts, so Peter Pan, the Mother Goose colonial quilt, and the regular colonial quilt, it basically would say, hey, make sure you cut this out because we are not going to give you another copy of it, and there is no place to send away for a copy. It was like, we are printing this one time in the paper, and then we wash our hands of it, and if you don't have all the blocks to make the quilt that we're having you submit to win these prizes out of this $75 pool, well, sorry, kids. And literally, they would print. We've been getting a lot of questions, and as a matter of fact, we are not going to reprint these. So sorry, if you missed one, ask a friend. Like, literally, this is what they said in the newspaper. Whereas later on, I noticed, particularly in the 30s, when they're printing like the Nancy Page stuff, those would say, if you want the whole set, or if you missed any of them, then you could send like 10 cents to the needlework department, and you'd get like, they'd send you back a little pattern book or whatever it was that had all the patterns in it. So, there's that. There's the newspapers just being like however they were going to be. And I do notice that sometimes they have, they would, well, there's just mistakes. You'll see sometimes. So Ruby McKim had a State Flowers quilt, and I can show you that too, because I actually have those downloaded. And like, as I was going through those, I had the worst time because some of them would be printed like block 1 in one newspaper was like lilacs. Block 1 in another newspaper was like, a rose or a sunflower. So I was like, what? Oh my gosh, yes, the ladies' magazines. Yes. I saw that you had this, blah, blah, blah. I want a copy of it, blah, blah, blah. But it's interesting. Dr. Dunton did that a lot. He would write, as an example, he wrote to Sears Roebuck after the Century of Progress quilt show in 1933. He wrote to them wanting to know if they were going to put out any kind of like exhibit catalog or, something that would show the quilts or the winners. And of course they didn't, which he was not happy about. And us here in modern days are not happy about, because it's it was a lost opportunity. There was a lot of information that we just don't have because they didn't bother to, to print anything. Um, and so they did end up publishing something that was really about how to make one or two of the quilts. So yeah, you can imagine, like, people were corresponding that way with these, magazines and publications, no doubt. And I think people, like, today we might drop an email to a company saying, I'm trying to find this thing, or I saw you had published this. Can you tell me where to get it? But nowadays, I mean, it would be unimaginable to think, like, writing a letter to, someone's customer service at Women's Day or whatever. We don't do that kind of stuff as often. I mean, I'm sure there are people that might still do it. But, yeah. And just from what I've read about the newspaper quilts, at least, were the newspaper just looked at it as an opportunity to sell more papers. They had literally no stake in these. And I would say, well, in fact, Ruby McKim, the only thing that you see in any of these patterns, and I mean, we've looked at, we've looked at a number of them now. The only thing that you even see in these that tells you it's Ruby McKim is right here. She signs them either Ruby Short McKim, or she signs it McKim Studios copyright. There is nothing that tells you otherwise who this belongs to, who drew this, or like what and the McKims had, McKim Studios. They had a business called Kimport Dolls. They had a company. This wasn't just Ruby sitting at her dining room table, like, drawing some stuff and sending it to the newspaper. Today, you don't see that. Today, if you look in a magazine or even on a website or something and you see somebody's design, typically we're going to have a link that goes with it to say, go to this person's website or go check out their Facebook or their social media, whatever. There's always, like, the credit given. And, well, I don't want to say that. There is not always credit given, but reputable people and publications would have that credit given, and you'd be able to find everything else that designer makes. But they just didn't do that back, in these newspaper quilts. They, I mean, again, like, the only credit that Ruby got was just this little, her little signature in there. Now, some of the other newspaper stuff, like Nancy Page, again, that was that's Florence Legank or Leganke. So she's not even, she's given this byline, but Nancy Page is the name that people remember, because a lot of stuff was published. And I'm not sure if it was earlier stuff. It seems like that makes sense. It was the earlier stuff didn't even have Florence Leganke on there. In some of the newspapers didn't put her name on there. So there's a lot less, care and consideration around some of this stuff than what we see today. And I guess in some cases it was a matter of, people just not knowing to push back and say, hey, that's my intellectual property. Give me credit. The copyright laws and all that stuff was so different back then. And I would say a lot of times designers or artists in general either didn't know their rights or found it too difficult to preserve their rights. And I'm not an expert on copyright. But I just know things were different back then in terms of, like, what you could claim as copyright. Of course, right now we're hearing all about, the Mickey Mouse and the Steamboat Willie being part of the public domain now. So I would say most of McKim's stuff is possibly public domain, but also she had a descendant that did some stuff, did some work with her things, her designs. So I'm not 100% sure that ancestor may have renewed her copyrights. So, that's something that I'm just curious about and kind of have on my list to research. Whereas some of this other stuff, like, it's just simply not copyrighted, period. And I don't know whether or not it falls under the older copyright laws or if it's excluded, you know. Um, so anyway, the Nancy Page stuff, you know, we'll look at that another day. But her stuff is very pretty. I really respond to the Nancy Page stuff, but we'll look at that another time. Um, so, oh yeah, Mara Deb, absolutely. Yep, Facebook, Discord, Instagram. I don't know how many times I've seen on Instagram somebody post something that they've made and everybody is like, "Oh, that's cute. Where can I get the pattern? Oh, that's cute. Did you design it? Oh, that's cute. Can I get the pattern? That's adorable. Where's the pattern? Who made that?" So, yeah, for sure. And it is so much easier now to identify stuff. I think about I was actually just having a conversation with someone right before this, mentioning how sort of a mentor had given her this entire box of, I want to say it was Ruby McKim stuff, like clipped from the newspaper. And I thought to myself, when the person that gifted these things, when she was searching for this stuff, she was probably getting it from a quilter who literally clipped them out of the paper. Um, if you didn't have access to that, I would say most of this stuff you would never see or never get your hands on unless somebody had done the research and republished it. Back, say, in the 70s and 80s. This stuff you just did not have eyes on unless somebody had saved it. Today, it's so easy now, to go, for this particular quilt, I can go on, Quilter's Index and search for it. I can, just Google, Nancy Page and find all kinds of stuff. Like I said, newspapers.com. You can get them all. So yeah, like I feel so lucky to live in today's day and time for this purpose, that, to satisfy the thirst for information about historical quilts or, vintage quilts, that we have, much easier access to these things. So we're lucky. All right. Guys, ready for some Averil Colby? Druid likes Averil because she's nice. Yeah, and so today's 18th century, we have glanced at some of the things that are in this section. There's the baby's caps or bonnets, and there's some weird hats, and some other garments. So this is kind of an interesting section. And after this, we have to think about, who do we go to next? Let me just throw out a couple of names so you can think about it. We still have Carrie Hall and Rose Kretzinger's book to look at. They're more along the lines of, probably, I would say they're probably the most similar to Ruth Finley, I would say. They probably did not have the chops that Florence Petto did. And, I'm not trying to say that they were any less, great researchers, writers, quilt makers, whatever, but Florence really, really got the details and very, very carefully studied quilts. Whereas I think Carrie Hall was a little bit more of like observational to a point. And she collected a lot of quilt patterns and quilting design patterns. So I think her focus was just a little bit different. Dr. Dunton did not like her book, but I say give her the benefit of the doubt. So we've got her book to read. And then, of course, we have Florence's second book. I'll let you guys decide when you're ready for some more Florence. Sorry, Druid. I don't think she's as snarky in the second book. And then there's a couple of books that have been recommended to me. What I was thinking about, what we could do next, instead of just reading through a book, I could do some more modern books and we could kind of do a page by page. And I think from a copyright perspective, that would be okay. If I'm not certainly from still living authors and editors, I don't want to step on any toes, and Twitch can be very copyright strikey. They're worse about it. Obviously they're they're watching and listening. You get the copyright strikes for music and that kind of media more frequently. And because I think it's easier for like AI and stuff to find that for them. Somebody mentioned to me that I did have a copyright notice on, I think it's Thursdays. I think it was Thursday stream. And I still haven't had a chance to like dig deep into it, but it doesn't look like they took away anything. Like they didn't mute anything. The sound is all there. So I don't know. I don't know if there's not humans that are reviewing these. It's AI. So I don't know if AI like heard me say something. I know I did say that the book was written in 1971, so maybe that was it. But anyway, for still living authors, I really want to be careful about, how we do that. But I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with paging through the book and looking at some pictures and sort of discussing the learnings from the book. And hopefully, if I offer that to look at, then, maybe it'll get people interested in who they may buy the book. So that's something to think about. And if there's any that you guys, have in mind, let me know. I want to show you guys stuff that you're interested in looking at. And, I'm always here for the reading. I will always be willing to read. So for when there's nothing better to do, there's nothing more pressing to look at, I will always have a book to read to you guys. So just some food for thought. Nothing that you have to say today. Oh, and also I wanted to mention the my Facebook page for Cake TV. I had intended to get on it with some postings there. And I think all I managed to do was get a posting for that book that I showed you. I want to say it was between Christmas and New Year's, where I talked about the passementary book, and I posted a video of in a passementary, like a factory workshop, like a workshop in the UK, them making cording. So I thought those were really cool, and I hope you had a chance to look at that. But I know I said I don't have New Year's resolutions, but I do kind of have a resolution about doing a better job of social media. And I'm sure if Jill is still here, Jill's like, okay, it's about time. So just wanted to throw that out to you guys. I'm peer pressure me. I'm working on it. I want to put more stuff out there on the Facebook page, and of course my Instagram accounts and stuff. So anyway, you know where to find me. You can find me in those two places. You can find me here. All right. So we're reading Quilting by Averil Colby. And we are on chapter 8, the 18th century. Let's get some water. Okay. A change in the style or pattern or fashion of any kind of needlework is not dependent on a change of date, nor even a change of century. And the period labeled circa 1700, for instance, given as the date for a number of examples of quilting, may cover 10 years or more on each side of the year 1700. And that's an interesting thing. This is actually a discussion and I think this is probably a discussion over any kind of historical stuff, like extant objects. When you don't have a really firm date and you say circa, what exactly does that mean? And it's for some people, it's 10 years on either side. But then I've heard modern historians saying something different. So I like the idea of 10 years. I mean, a decade previous or a decade later, that seems reasonable. Obviously in the 2000s, we've generally all lived through the 2000s to this point. We have a better way of pinpointing when something happened or when something was manufactured or whatever. But as you go back in time, it makes sense that you kind of put some wiggle room in there. But I don't know, is it in the 1700s, is a 10-year span? Is that good enough? Does it maybe need to be 20 years? I don't know. I'm not a historian like that. I'm an amateur historian. So, but I do know that this is a topic of discussion. Like it's a big deal. So, all right. So may cover 10 years or more on either side of the year 1700. Quilted work bearing any date, unfortunately, is rare. By the beginning of the 18th century, life in Britain was more prosperous than it had been during the previous 100 years. There was less general need for economy, and as regards the development of quilting, the development of quilting, the most noticeable feature was that there was more of it. More people could afford to keep up with the fashion in dress and furnishing, and the novelties of the mid-16th century had stimulated the making of similar quilts here. In spite of the prosperity, however, economy did not go by the board entirely, and a number of the surviving cord quilted garments and bed covers clearly were cut from larger pieces of work. Bed quilts made from curtains, hangings or larger quilts, and small articles of clothing cut down from larger garments, such as petticoats. Steele's observation in the Tatler, in the case of the petticoat, referring to a woolen petticoat of exceptional size, must have been influenced by a form of economy of which he had some knowledge. He was unlikely to have thought it out for himself. I ordered it to be folded up and sent as a present to a widow gentlewoman who has 5 daughters, desiring she would make each of them a petticoat out of it. Wow, must have been huge if you could have made 5 petticoats out of one. And send it back and send me back the remainder. Okay. So he sends this woman some giant petticoat, a woolen petticoat of exceptional size, from which she was supposed to make 5, well, we don't know, they may have been children, but she was supposed to make 5 petticoats out of one petticoat and then send the extra back to him. Okay. All right, Mr. Steele. Let's see. Send me back the remainder, which I designed to cut into stomachers, caps, facings of my waistcoat sleeves, and other garnitures. I'm assuming that means like flourishes or garnishments. Children's garments can be seen to have been cut down, but there is little positive evidence of any other garnitures in cut-down quilting. The amount and variety of quilting that must have been made from the last part of the 16th century onwards can be gauged to some extent by the number of surviving examples, not only of bed quilts, but of clothing such as caps, waistcoats, petticoats, and dresses. The elaboration of the work on quilted petticoats caused a change of fashion about the middle of the century, when the style of dresses was altered to allow for the skirts to be open in front to show the quilted petticoat beneath. So those type of dresses were called, they basically called an English style dress, and it so mid like 1740s. I spent a lot of time researching that because we have French and Indian War period, and we have a fort here near us called Fort Frederick, where they do a market day thing every year, and it's basically like a Renaissance fair for the early 18th century. So there's vendors, there's people doing reenactment, there's everybody in costume. So of course I made an English gown for this, and typically the gown would come, comes over your shoulders and then comes down here, but it's open all the way down the front. And so you have a stomacher then that goes here to cover your bodice or your corset. At that time they would have been called a bodice. And so your stomacher comes, and then the whole front of the dress is open to allow this really beautiful, it's not just a petticoat for the purpose of support and undergarmentry. You have this petticoat that's beautiful. Now underneath the beautiful petticoat, then you have the ones that are for the support and the floof and all that. And they would be less interesting looking. But the pretty quilted ones. And the other interesting thing is, like, the front of it would be pretty and quilted. The back of it might be like from your waist down to like maybe the back of your knees would be like a plain fabric. And then you might have the quilted, all the way around, like only the, I'm trying to get my hands here, like only like a strip. And then of course then the whole front of the petticoat would be quilted. So they found all kinds of ways to do less with more, or do more with less, I guess. Okay. There is evidence also to show that patchwork was known as a substitute for uncut lengths of material as the top layer of an interlined bed quilt. And before we move on, let's look at this. This is a linen panel worked with flat quilted ground in backstitch. Remember, the British UK, they did backstitch instead of running stitch. With representation of the Last Supper, okay, I can kind of see that, in cord quilting. Feather leaf and flower patterns are set on a ground worked in meander. Edges filled with linen fringe. I'm sorry, edges finished with linen fringe and tassels. And this may have been intended as a chalice cover. So it's not very big. 21 by 29 inches. So kind of can see, like, that's really difficult. Where I've got my finger is the Lord's Supper or the Last Supper. You kind of see what looks like people's heads. But this is such a unfortunate photograph. Or, yeah. But then you could definitely see the meander quilting, though. Okay. Some garments, quilts, and hangings of cord quilting, which are attributed to the early part of the century, continued the style of the late 17th century work, in which patterns were worked on an unquilted ground. But fewer examples of this work have survived than have those in which the cord patterns were surrounded by flat, unpadded quilting, and worked either with backstitching in a close all-over pattern, or with darning in straight or curved lines, similar to the ground shown in Figure 100. Let's see, what was that one? Ah, yes, it was this one. The Fabulous Beast. This is that German quilt. So this is what she's referencing. Honestly, all of these to me look like just densely quilted things. The comparative scarcity of surviving examples with an unquilted ground may have been due to the fact that it did not wear as well as more heavily quilted work, and so more of it has perished, or that it was not as popular and so less was made. The patterns always are fine and elegant in outline and were worked equally well on cotton, linen, and satin. Although large hangings, curtains, and quilts were quilted in this way, its lightness and detail seem to be more appropriate to clothing, especially caps. The lappet cap, which we will look at in a second. Oh, I don't know though. Wait a minute. She's giving a different number than the one I'm seeing. It sort of infuriates me when they reference something that is on a completely different page. Okay. So she's talking about this lappet hat, and we're going to look at a different lappet hat in a minute, but this crazy thing. That lappet cap shows the type of pattern clearly. And this cap of oyster-colored satin lined with rose pink silk, that sounds pretty, probably was made from another garment, perhaps a petticoat or the skirt of a dress. The scrolling stems of flower and leaf shapes can be seen to have been cut to shape from the front edge of the brim and lappets. And the base of the cap section has a drawstring threaded through worked loops to adjust the fitting. Am I frozen again? Is the internet connected? Are you having problems? Ugh. I keep dropping off of my stream, and I don't understand why. Well, maybe? No. Well, all right. So, let's see what happens here. I have my turtle out dancing for a minute so I can figure out what's happening. Okay. Well, okay. I think I'm I think I might be okay, but I'm really out of sync. Like what I'm seeing on my screen from Twitch happened like 5 minutes ago. So, um yeah, I'm not sure what to do now. Okay. I'm going to go back to reading and I'll keep an eyeball on that. Um I'm really sorry, you guys. This really is stinky in general. And I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what's happening. A minute ago, I yelled at my husband and said, "Do we have internet?" And he says, "Yeah, I got internet." So I don't know. I don't know if it's me or not. So, um, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and keep going. Hopefully, you guys have hung in there, and I'm really sorry. And if not, you'll have a super dumb replay to watch. Okay. So, where I left off was with the Lappets. So, um, This is what we're talking about. And this is a cap. And in case you're not sure what you're looking at here, this is the back of the cap. And then these long pieces would hang down on either sides of your face. So like, it's like a brim on a bonnet, but it's got these long sides. So, yeah, that's what a lappet is. And what she's saying is it looks like, just based on, let's look at it and put it up here in really close detail. You can see that it's this beautiful corded work. Yeah, so it looks like it was cut from something else is essentially what she was saying about it. So, so where we left off. Caps with long hanging lappets were not common, and the fashion for them must have covered a short period only, as examples and references to them are rare. But it is recorded with the 36th number of the Connoisseur. So I'm guessing the Connoisseur was some type of, I don't know, some type of publication, and this would be the 36th number of it, in 1754, that of all the branches of female dress, no one has undergone more alterations than that of the head. That's weird. The long lappets, the horseshoe cap, the Brussels head, and the prudish mob pinned under the chin have all of them had their day. One other known example with long lappets of the same period has survived. It is made of fine cotton, but the quilting in this case was done especially for the cap. The scrolling leaf and flower patterns being arranged symmetrically around a central carnation shape on the back of the cap section and ending at the base of each lappet round the same flower pattern. The histories of the caps are unknown, but both appear to be of English work. Now, something that's funny, as I read this, like we say caps a lot. So my maiden name is Capps, C-A-P-P-S. And from what I understand, caps, the Old English comes from caput, which is head, but is really referring to heads of cabbage. So my husband has always joked that my maiden name is I'm a cabbage trucker. But it's funny because when I was younger, I guess before, there was much historical stuff like meanings of names and heraldry and all that stuff published. My family always said that we were hat makers. And I was always disappointed by that because I don't feel I look good in a hat. Like I wear stocking caps in like, hoodie, like beanie type of stuff during the winter to keep my head warm, but I'm generally not a hat person. So anyway, I think I was a little bit more excited to find out that my maiden name came from cabbage, cabbage farmer instead of hat maker. Anyway, moving right along. A man's cap with short lappets, which is the one on this page that I thought we were going to talk about earlier, shows patterns which have been planned to fit the shape in every detail, even to the stitching of the bound edges, which are worked with backstitch along the middle of the binding, giving the appearance of a finish with a double row of quilted cord. So this is the one that I thought she was going to talk about earlier, and this is a really interesting thing. So first of all, I mean, look at the shape of this thing. Like this hat right here is kind of what I expect. It's kind of a skull cap, but it's got this little brim that turns up. That's kind of cute, and I think it's got like a slit in the back. But this thing, this is 18th century. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody wearing something like that. What they say, okay, I'm sorry. So this is not an 18th century hat. Why do you have it in the 18th century illustrations then? So what it says about this is a man's quilted cotton lappet hat. So again, it's got the things hanging down. Shown as a protective lining for an earlier 15th century. That makes much more sense. Doge's beretta. Cord quilted with running and back stitches with some French knots. Italian, 18th century. Oh, so is this saying 18th century? but it is being used as a lining for a 15th century hat. Okay, I got it. So I'm guessing that's what this dark part must be, like sort of the lining that goes up inside the hat, unless this is indeed the hat. But the lappets, it sounds like, are 18th century. So interesting. Um, yeah, headwear back, in these earlier times, Renaissance and before, were so interesting. I mean, obviously they covered their heads a lot just for warmth and for, just, general protection, I guess. A larger point, yeah. I need something like a big bulb that I can have with a big bulb. Although I do have one of these hats that has the hole in the top for pulling your ponytail or your bun through. But anyway, yeah, hats are just they're interesting, in terms of dates and historical dates. Okay. So the date of the cap is given as circa 1700, and it is shown as a protective lining to a doge's cap or beretta of leather of an earlier date, which is attributed to the doges Marco and Agostino Barbarigo, 1485 to 1501. So yeah, we're talking about like a hat that is made to be the lining of another hat that's 200 years older. This cap was for day wear, but a reference to a quilted nightcap, also in 1700, can be found in The Way of the World, which was published in that year. A quilted nightcap with one ear is among the collection of other tattered wares recommended by Lady Wishfort for foible to set herself up in trade in her famous outburst of boudoir Billingsgate against her maid. So this is referencing stories and I guess publications I'm just not familiar with. Yes. Lots of hair, long and unruly in my case. Another cap of early 18th century work, which is the one we just looked at, the little skull cap, shows a type of pattern popular at the time for cord quilting, which has been compared to the traditional wheel pattern in smocking, said to indicate that the wearer was a carter or wagoner by trade. This kind of similarity occurs in many kinds of traditional needlework where the patterns are related but not accompanied by the same significance. In this case, it is unlikely to indicate any such activity of the wearer of the cap, nor of the baby whose cap pieces are shown in the drawings, which we'll look at in a second, which are almost identical with those in the adult's cap. Caps for infants and children were not made in the 4 sections usually found in larger adult sizes, but those of the bonnet shape were made with almost square side pieces. A very finely worked example of this type contains heart patterns on the back of the cap and in the corners of the front, in which the outlines were made from strings of small hearts, very similar in arrangement to the pattern used sometimes for wadded quilting. So I don't know that we're gonna really get to see that. Yeah, I don't see that. So real quick, we'll look at this again. So this is the adult cap. And yeah, as per usual, hard to see the details, but they're there for what it's worth. And then this is a section of a hat, and I don't know. So it says one section of a man's linen cap worked with linen thread in back running and pulled stitches with some French knots. But this appears to be like, I don't know if this is the finished hat or not. I feel like this might not be the finished hat. This is maybe all that stitching stuff worked flat before the cap is assembled. I could be wrong though, because I do know that they did that. They did that with waistcoats and any kind of stuff that, if they were making it from scratch. If they were cutting it from something else, different story, of course. But when they're making it from scratch, they would trace the shapes and then do the decorative, whatever it's stitching, cording, quilting, embroidery, whatever. And then, they'd cut those out and then assemble them. So this is the drawings of the baby hat. And it looks like, so this here in the middle, this square piece, she's saying, da, 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 da. It seems like that piece would kind of go down the middle, and then those curved pieces would go on the sides, so that the big strip in the middle is kind of like a gusset, and then those curved pieces then are eased into that to cover the side of the head. A characteristic of much 18th century quilting on garments is the use of embroidery stitches in white thread as fillings or ground patterns for cord quilting on white linen or cotton. French knots as fillings and groundwork nearly always are among the stitches used. They may be worked solidly together or arranged in small patterns, such as a trellis, scroll, or circles, sometimes as the only embroidery other than the quilting. Yowza. French knots. They're often with pulled, punched, Florentine, and other stitches. The more elaborate work of this kind generally was used for men's waistcoats, but French knots with cord quilted patterns were popular for babies' caps. And so we see here a bunch of different babies' caps. And you can see, I think maybe this one kind of shows the best what I'm saying as far as like, can you see how that flat strip, like this is the back of the hat. And so that flat strip would, come down over the back, from the hairline to the back, and then those two side pieces. So then it becomes like a little helmet. Okay, and then we have here, let's see. We have a men's sleeved linen waistcoat, cord quilted patterns in back and running stitches with added embroidery, in pulled stitches and French knots. And then we'll see a detail of that. And then we also see a cuff of a linen coat sleeve, cord quilted patterns worked in backstitch. So here, that's the coat. And then this is the sleeve, a piece of the sleeve. And I mean, gosh, that is really striking. And what I think the pulled stitches are in these areas where you kind of see black dots or black, sort of like little black spaces, that seems to me to be the pulled work. Like the threads are literally pulled out, and there's some type of like finishing that's done there. And then look at this. This is the actual detail of the jacket. That's the pocket. And I guess it looks like, I don't know if this section for some reason doesn't have any quilting on it. I don't know if it was damaged or what. But oh gosh, look at that. I mean, it just looks embossed. It is so finely worked. And then let's look again at the coat itself. I mean, this, you could see a George Washington or some statesman wearing this kind of thing, 1700s. Yowza. That is amazing. All right. So coats and jackets for infants were made of cord and wadded quilting throughout the century. Let's see. Okay. The jacket that we're going to look at next is an example of a small garment which is made from a larger piece of cord quilting. A sleeveless christening coat of ivory satin lined with white silk and thinly interlined with lamb's wool was made for the purpose. The patterns match at the seams and fit the shape of the garment. Its history is known also. It was worn by, and probably made for, Thomas Symner Mostyn Champneys for his christening in 1769. Later he became Sir Thomas Champneys and was, I guess it's Champneys, and was the 25th in lineal descent from the first owner of Orchardley Manor near Frome in Somerset. And I'm sure I have pronounced all of those locations wrong, and I feel like unless they're lurking, I don't know that any of our UK authorities are here today to help me. I usually appreciate their corrections because when you don't hear people speak these names and you're not sure about like the the oddball pronunciation rules of places that are not, I mean, even places in the US I have problems with sometimes. Yeah, so these are the two items she's talking about. You've got the baby's jacket here at the top, and then this is the christening cloak. And, you know, the little jacket at the top, it looks like something you could put on a baby today. And then the christening coat, I mean, that'd be like a little kind of, what are those little bunting things, the little, when my son was little, I put him in, and it's just like a bag. It's like a zip-up bag that has sleeves and a hood. That's kind of what those kind of things remind me of. Sort of like wrap them around the baby. Okay. Small items for dress for adults often were quilted, and although it would have been practical for them to have been cut down from larger pieces, as for children's clothes, this does not seem to be so. Perhaps it was an unwritten rule of fashion that this was not done in the best circles, as existing specimens appear to have been made for the purpose. Now that's interesting. So they'll cut down articles of clothing or things to make new quilted things for children. But if you're going to use some kind of small object that's going to be quilted as an adult, you'd make it from scratch. Pear-shaped pockets worn under the skirt of a dress, made in pairs, tied around the waist with tapes attached to them, were embroidered over a flat quilted ground. The quilting in this case lent a little necessary stiffness to the material and kept the pockets flat. Stomachers also were quilted in the same way, or with fine corded patterns arranged to fit the V shape of the garment, on linen, silk, or satin. An example in the Gallery of English Costume in Manchester is fitted with an inside pocket at the base. Oh, interesting. Cuffs of fine linen, flat quilted or raised with thin cord, some described as nurse's cuffs, were made to slip over the cuffs of a dress, the quilting again providing a practical stiffening. Mittens for babies also were quilted. Oh, can you imagine little baby mittens, little quilted baby mittens? Little mention is made of quilted pincushions. Quilted pincushions. A custom began in the 16th century for wearing a small pincushion hanging from the waist. Lasted into the 1700s, but none made of quilting have survived. Sounds like she's talking about a chatelaine. So, you know, it's like a chain or you wear it around your neck, but more likely worn around your waist, like a belt or girdle type of thing that had your implements hanging from it. Larger pincushions for keeping on the dressing table were made, and a reference to them in domestic needlework mentions large cushions of quilted linen with beautiful designs in yellow silk in use in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. An example of this type still exists, which was made from two early 18th century fragments of previously cord quilted linen. The patterns are The patterns are formally floral in character, and the pincushion measures approximately 8 inches long and 6 inches wide, with the edges finished with a fringe. Now, I do not think there's a picture of that, but wow, that sounds really interesting. And it's big. Gosh, 6 by 8. I actually have a cutting mat on my desk right now. So 8 inches is that wide. And 6 inches. So, I mean, we're talking about something that's substantial. One of the most important fashions in quilting, however, was in its use on men's and women's waistcoats, and for jackets, petticoats, and dresses, and many examples can be seen in museums and other collections of textiles and costume, which show the extent to which quilting was adapted to various changes of fashion during the century. So, although this is one of the shorter chapters, I think that I am going to read just a little bit more of this since we had technical difficulty, and I will show you the pictures, the rest of the pictures in this section, and then I think I'm afraid of tempting fate. You know what I'm saying? Let's see. Yeah. So let's look real quick. Let's look at some of the pictures. Let me mark my place here. So we looked at this lappet hat already, but then we have this. Oh, this is the front of one of the quilted petticoats. So we've talked a lot about petticoats, but this is the first one she's showing. So that's just like a section of it, but you can see like this would be on the bottom how like just detailed and elegant that is. Now I think I mentioned the petticoats would be quilted all on the front, and then the back of them would have, like some plain stuff. But usually the more dense quilting and design, or, embellishment, or, pretty stuff is at the bottom of the petticoat. The upper part of the petticoat in the front is usually just like quilted in a diamond or like a square on point. Even though it's open in the front, it's really that bottom piece that is so like important and so pretty to look at. And now, let's see, these are some of the petticoat filling patterns she shows. And so you can see these different, and these look like, cording, opportunities for cording here. And there's more. That feather, I mean, gosh, we've looked at lots of feathers. And then here are some of the groundwork. So in between all of those motifs, these are the filling stitches for the groundwork. This one, sort of the chevron pattern, makes sense to me. This other one is like these little brackets. I don't know that I've ever, I don't know that I've ever seen anything that looks like that. Those little brackets. And then, holy moly, look at this. I'm surprised this was not referenced in the cord quilting section, because that's what this is. This is all cord quilted. I mean, look at that. How dense that is. That is absolutely amazing. And it says that this is detail of cord quilted white linen bed cover with running and double running stitches in cotton thread. Patterns of a basket and realistic roses, carnations, lilies, and leaves on a plain ground. And that's from the Great Tangley Manor, Guildford, England. Okay, then we have, these are kind of Welsh. Some of these, and this leaf design right here in the middle, that I've seen in Welsh, some modern Welsh quilting patterns. And that tulip is kind of, a stylized tulip is kind of Welsh too. And then this is linen quilt with embroidered patterns. The quilting is worked with cotton thread in back and running stitches through thin interlining. Embroidery worked with polychrome silk threads in stem, satin, split, and chain stitch with some bullion work. Bullions, if you're not an embroiderer, bullions are like a French knot, but long. So you're wrapping the thread around your needle and then putting it back through, so the thread on the top part of, that stays on the top of the fabric ends up being, instead of a little knot, ends up being this long, like, wrapped tube looking thing. It can make like really dense, pretty embroidery, but it's also finicky, just like a French knot. So the border compartments contain patterns of griffin, mermaid, merman, fishes, a duck, a three-masted ship, castle, camel, hound with flower, rabbits, birds, a tree, a woman wearing a quilted underskirt, and beneath a heraldic shield, the initials ES 1703. So this, because not only is it so densely quilted, also embroidered, it's very hard to see like any of the specifics with the quilting now, unfortunately. But it's got that date of 1703 on it. I bet this thing is worth $1 bazillion in terms of, like, insuring it or whatever. if it is, assuming that it's in a museum safely. Wow. And then, was there one more I wanted? No. So, yeah, this next section, she's going to get into talking about women, the prices they were paying, and these are getting into aprons and things. So let's kind of leave it there, and we'll pick up on this week. We did hats to death today, so we'll pick up on the petticoats on Thursday. Now, assuming that there's an ad break. Now, assuming that my internet or whatever is happening here behaves, what I am planning to do on Wednesday, and I'm really bummed that I may have lost some people since the beginning of the show because of the technical difficulties. I am going to do a Creative Mojo workshop for you guys. It's a piece that I've done a couple times. Most recently, I did it as a keynote for a spinning guild, but it's not specific to any kind of creativity. It's creativity across the board. So I'm going to do that on Wednesday night. So I will put it up on the schedule here on Twitch, and then I will put it also on the Facebook page for Cake TV, and I'll also put it on my Instagram because I've been neglecting my Instagram since Christmas. So yeah, and I know a few of you mentioned wanting to get your Sojo back here in 2024. My gosh, 2024. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do Wednesday night. So I hope you can join me. And if not, there will be a replay. That is one because that is my training. What I'm going to do is I'm doing it for you guys, and I'll leave it up for a little bit in case you can't be there live and you want to catch the replay, and then it's going to go away. Because I'm starting to sort of collect some things that I'm packing away behind a paywall. Cake needs to make some money off of her intellectual property. So yes, so Wednesday night, I think I'm going to do 7 p.m. Eastern time. I realize that that's still kind of afternoon time for the West Coast, but I'm hoping that you have some wiggle room. And it's about an hour and a half. And I mean, you guys know I can talk forever and I can I can take up time. So, but yeah, we're looking at I think 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern time on this Wednesday, day after tomorrow. So keep your eyes open. And if anything changes, I'll post it and let you know. Yeah, so I'm so sorry about the technical difficulties today, you guys. And Druid, thank you so much for sticking it out and helping me. It is nice to have a wonderful mod like yourself. So I'm going to skedaddle, and I will hopefully see you guys on Wednesday night. And in the meantime, if you are part of the quilt nerding audience on Instagram, aww. Thanks, Druid. I totally forgot that I had that in. I love that, the Golden Girls. So yeah, but yeah. So hopefully, if you're doing the book club thing with me and Jill, we'll see you tomorrow night. Fingers crossed that the snowstorm in her area doesn't knock that out. And if not, I'll see you Wednesday. And if not that, then I will see you Thursday at normal time. So I hope you guys have a wonderful afternoon, and I will see you soon, my dear darling cakelets. I love you guys bunches. Mwah, mwah, mwah.